It's Thursday the 19th of March 2015. I'm Andrew Howes here with Darren Cronshaw, and we are 3 days out from Ironman Melbourne. Darren, welcome, and not long to go now before your first Ironman.
Thanks Andrew, it's feeling real now we've got our numbers and had our practice swim at the beach.
So Darren, I thought I'd just start with some introductory remarks and then I'd probably get you to do most of the talking. So we first met at the start of last year when you were completing our club's Try program. I remember you then asked my advice about completing Challenge Shepparton in November, which is a half Ironman distance race, and I was inclined to be a little bit cautious about this and perhaps suggesting you defer that to the following year, but you nonetheless signed up for the race that year, and you were completely right, given that while I knew you'd go well under 6 hours, I think you even surprised yourself with a stunning debut of 5:09 in very tough windy and rainy conditions. So on the basis of that, you then felt appropriately qualified to sign up for Ironman Melbourne, and I've had the great experience of advising you, training with you, and witnessing your amazing transformation, including most recently a less than flat-out 5:01 at another half Ironman distance race at Challenge Brighton, again in tough conditions. I thought it would be worthwhile to spend some time talking with you about your journey from Try to what will no doubt be a very competitive Ironman performance on Sunday, about a year later. So could we first start with your sporting background when you were growing up, and could you also advise on any sort of sporting genes you might have inherited from your family?
Okay, thanks Andrew. Yeah, I enjoyed sport in primary school, playing cricket, soccer, rugby, swimming, but I never felt like I excelled at anything. I was sometimes, when we were choosing teams, I felt like I was chosen for LRO, you know LRO?
Just explain that one to me.
LRO is the left, right, out
right,
position.
okay.
You know, I was chosen last and had the emotional scars to prove it.
Right.
But I enjoyed sport through primary school. In high school, I did enjoy cross country sometimes, perhaps showing that I was more suited to endurance activities than other sports.
Right.
And then used to play golf because I enjoyed having a bit of a hit and then being able to sit on the sideline and talk to my mates and the girls.
Yeah.
But then in year 10 I had a hernia operation and so got a doctor's certificate to be exempted from PE and sport for a term. But I pulled that out pretty much every year for the next 3 years and just wagged sport and PE, and that gave me more time to spend, I guess, on the academic side of things and just mucking around and with the horses that I was buying and selling at the time. So that became my sporting activity. I did jog probably through those later years of high school, and then for most of my life I have jogged 2 or 3 times a week for 20 or 30 minutes or maybe up to an hour. So it was never really competitive or regular, but or was regular but never really intense. But
okay. And your parents, grandparents, any sort of sporting pedigree that you can think of that you might have accessed?
No, not that I can think of. Yeah,
I'm sure there's got to be something there.
Probably perhaps.
And in more recent years, and in particular how you came to this slightly wacky world of triathlon?
Yes. Yeah, well, in 1999 I was living in Shepparton, and a friend of mine who was also my dentist enrolled in a triathlon, but we didn't really have much of an idea of what that involved, except we knew we had to get wet and jump on a bike and run. But for example, in our training, we trained in the pool but never practiced swimming in the lake, and was quite shocked when we hopped in the lake and realised it was quite a different experience. We decided not to bother with wetsuits because we thought that would slow us down in transition, which was a mistake in cold Shepparton. I think I put my head under the water once to breathe and pulled my head out promptly and never was able to get my head back in the water again, and backstroked most of the way to there. So it was a bit of a rookie introduction to triathlons.
Sounds quite typical.
I put it to the side for 12 years.
Right.
And when I moved to Hawthorn, I thought it would be a good chance to pull out that dream again and join the local triathlon club. But I saw you guys swimming down at the pool and it looked way too serious for me, so I kind of procrastinated again. And instead joined some friends from our local Baptist church, joined in with the local Anglican church organised indoor cricket competition called SPL Cricket. And they put this on particularly to be hospitable to Indian students who loved cricket, and so we joined in. But then we went overseas with my family, my children who were at that time were 14, 12 and 10 years old, and we had the kind of trip of a lifetime backpacking around Europe. And while doing that, we had the privilege of seeing Florence Marathon happen.
Right.
And I said to my children, I'd love to come home and have a go at a triathlon and maybe do a marathon that year.
Right.
And I realised as I kind of got in touch with that dream that as I thought about my cricket playing, which I wasn't particularly good at, I didn't particularly enjoy it, and I realised that my teammates wouldn't really miss me as a team member. They might miss me as a friend if they didn't see me again, but they wouldn't miss me off the team. So I came home and quit the cricket and found that actually there is a triathlon course that could get me into triathlons with an easy introduction. So the day after we arrived from overseas, that course started, and I joined the course, enjoyed it, and in fact some of the people I met that night that were participating in the course are some of the people who are most eagerly ready to cheer me on Beach Road when we run on Sunday.
Right, excellent. So just following that triathlon, you're clearly looking at some more challenging races, some longer races. Did you have any idea that you would end up where you are now, staring down your first Ironman in a matter of days?
No idea for this year. I do remember doing triathlon and being inspired by the Ironman participants and seeing Ironman a couple of years ago from the position of the aid station and talking to those who were getting ready for it and so on. But I thought, oh, maybe that's something I could do in 5 years' time or 6 years' time and build up for it. After the first triathlon course, I still felt not quite ready to get right into full training, so I kind of repeated kindergarten in a sense. I repeated the triathlon course. I did it again, which was, I find, helpful because it was just a really helpful rhythm to introduce me to triathlons, and doing it again was just another helpful rhythm to kind of do it at that level. And then so I thought, having done that twice in a row, I thought I kind of did challenge Shepparton and signed up for that partly to think, well, that's a good goal to set, and I signed up 10 months ahead. I thought I'd build up to it gradually. Didn't do it. And when I did challenge Shepparton, some people said to me, oh, maybe you'll do an Ironman, and I just laughed and said, oh no, I don't think so. But then as I got ready for challenge Shepparton and found myself getting fitter and in better condition, I said to myself, well, if I could get under 5 hours 30, I'll consider it, but I wasn't committing to it. But if I got more than 5 hours 30, I would just put it off for another year and maybe think about Ironman later when I was more fit. But when I came in under 5:30, and you encouraged me and said, well, with that effort, you could do it if you're prepared to put in the training. I thought, well, it'll be a good year to give it a go, so I thought, all right, sign up for it.
Right. So you mentioned you had a bit of a running background, but if we talk about the other two legs, so particularly with the bike, I mean, you've improved in all three, but from my perspective, where you've just taken off is on the bike leg. And I remember once you bought your time trial bike and combining that with some really focused bike training, your performance really accelerated. In addition to being just strong on the bike, you seem entirely unaffected by things like wind and rain. So did you find that you just took fairly easily to the bike?
I've discovered a love for the bike leg, and I don't know what it is about the wind and the rain, but I just kind of seem to push through. I did ride a motocross bike as a kid, so maybe that kind of rough handling paid off. But I rode a BMX bike as a kid, but really it was when we moved here to Hawthorn was the first time I've ever bought a road bike, my faithful old $400 Reed over here. And then after riding the 20 kilometres for the sprint triathlon for the tri course, was one of the first times I would have gone that sort of distance at pace. And then I remember June last year I went away on a Hawthorn Triathlon Club training weekend, and we rode for 70 kilometres around the peninsula, and that would have been the longest ride I would have done in my life, you know. And I was right at the back with one other friend, Sarah, was stayed back to look after me, but that was the longest ride I did. But I guess I've tried to follow your advice and put in the regular training, and good equipment and a good bike does help. It kind of makes you confident, makes the riding fun, but it's really been putting in the regular training that's helped pick up the pace and the endurance, I think.
So on that, we've done some sessions down at the Burnley 3 kilometre circuit, which have been both lengthy and quite intense. So how have you found that? And are you going to be happy to stay clear of Burnley for a little while at least?
Okay.
After the race?
Yeah, well, down at Burnley, Richmond Boulevard, I'm glad you've introduced me to that, because I do find it, some people laugh because they think it's boring just going backwards and forwards, and how could we do that for sometimes up to 6 hours? But I must admit that I am attracted to it because it's, I don't mind the view, actually, with the Yarra River there. It's quite a nice, scenic ride. It's not too far away from home. And I like that it's without the traffic lights and less traffic, especially the times we tend to go down there. So, and it's flexible. We can go down there for 40 minutes and do some sprints, or we can go down there and stay for 5 or 6 hours and fuel up with the taps and the oil house nearby and so. So no, so I expect that you'll see me back there at Burnley in coming days.
All right, that's good to hear. Moving on to the swimming now. Now, the swim, and particularly the ocean swim, is one of the most intimidating, if not often the most intimidating, for the beginner triathlete, and even for some fairly experienced triathletes. Swimming in the pool's one thing, but you get into the ocean, you've got the salt water, the currents, the waves, you're having to lift your head up to sight, you've got other people, jellyfish, who knows what else may not be out there. You found the swimming difficult at times. Do you want to just talk a bit about that and what you did? Because certainly you wouldn't think that from your performances now.
Yeah, I found in Try when we started in the pool, I did some greater lengths of swimming that I'd done before. So when we increased it from 1 to 2 or 2.5 kilometres, I hadn't done as much training with that distance before. But that was a okay graduated step. But going to the ocean was quite different. I remember the first time we went to the ocean, I made the mistake of thinking, oh, well, I'm getting up at 5 o'clock, I'll take a coffee there. And I had a coffee on the beach while we were getting ready to go in, and which was the last thing I should have done, because I jumped in the water and it was just so freezing and my heart went through the roof, and I didn't feel like I could put my head under the water to breathe. And then I struggled sometimes with when it was dark or not being able to see the bottom and getting into the rhythm of breathing. So there was often times when we'd go as a group and the group would take off and you or Jeb or Kate would stay back with me just to get me going. And I remember you saying to me sometimes, maybe just swim 3 strokes with your head under the water and then take a breath and see how you go. And so it was quite a challenge for me. And I don't think in sports before I've had the feeling like this is really hard, it's creating anxiety, and I had to say to myself, feel the fear and kind of do it anyway, you know. And so I really did try to do that and overcome it. I remember sometimes some of the other try members would just swim from one pole to the other at the beach, and I'd just come up and feel panicked and hyperventilating and having to put my hand on Kate's shoulder and just to get my breath back again. But I think with the other thing that I found hard too was the wetsuit was something that was new, and I haven't got much experience with wetsuits, and especially the feeling of constriction around my chest and my throat. I just had the reaction that I can't breathe. But with some more experience, and I did try another wetsuit, I started to get into the rhythm a bit more. And what really helped was that actually, even for Challenge Shepparton, I didn't feel like I was ready, that you taking me out in the lake the day before Challenge Shepparton and just encouraging me to calm down and take it easy and practicing on that course really helped turn the corner. And so that swim for Challenge Shepparton, ironically, was the longest competitive swim I'd ever done, but it was probably the first that I enjoyed.
Right, So given this interview is in large part aimed at the try audience, if there are athletes out there, and I'm sure there are, who are concerned about the swim once they get into the ocean, I mean, would you just say it's a matter of time? Are there other things they should try and focus on?
I think it's good to start to go out with friends and to not feel like you've got to travel, do a whole big distance, just do little bits at a time to start with, and perhaps try perhaps starting in the daytime rather than really early in the morning might help too.
Okay.
And I think, and the regularity of going and
Yeah.
just practicing and putting your head under the water and looking around.
Yeah.
And I used to have a little mantra that I'd say to myself too, and I'd say to myself, the ocean is my friend is the ocean. And now I'd quote Nemo to myself,
Right.
keep swimming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that you mentioned the feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So it's not, I think, trying to avoid that feel because it's not there. Sure. It is there, but you can get through it.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And I think you helped me with that, Andrew, by saying, actually, be ready. You might panic, and that's okay. If you panic, here's some techniques or approaches to deal with that. And so just by saying, encouraging me to say I could stop and breaststroke or backstroke or get my breath back and then start again, that helped me think, even if I do, as I went into the swim, I thought, even if I do panic, I've got some strategies to deal with that, and ironically that meant I was less likely to panic.
Yeah, okay, great. One of the other aspects about your, or the outcome of your training and diet regime perhaps, has been a fairly dramatic weight loss. Now, triathletes, I think, can be overly conscious of weight and weight loss, but it has been fairly striking in your case. So, what are the actual stats in terms of before and after weight, and how did you achieve this?
Sure. Well, in July last year I was 82 kilos, and then I lost 5 kilos between that while I was getting ready for Challenge Shepherding. So I went down to 77 kilos, and then from after Challenge Shepherd in November to the beginning of February, I lost another 7 kilos. I went from 77 to 70, and then I've stayed stable at that since. Yeah. And I think it was inspired. My aspirations to lose some weight was inspired when our running coach Anthony De Castella said, for every kilo you lose, you'll probably gain 2 minutes faster on the marathon. And I thought, well, that's motivation enough. I need all the help I can get, so I think I'll have be conscious of my weight a bit more and be more careful about what I'm eating. So over that 6 months, I have exercised more and not eaten less, but eaten better, and that's been helped by particularly, as we talked about, diet plans as well as exercise plans, and as I've talked to Isabella De Castella, a sports nutritionist, and she's advised me and helped me develop a customised meal plan that helped me lose basically not anything drastically or dramatically, but basically just losing a kilo a fortnight over that time.
Yeah, so a steady decrease.
It was a steady decrease, and then yourself and Izzy's advice was consistent in February in saying you've got to 70 kilos, that's probably a good racing weight, and I read a book called Racing Weight, and it suggested ways that you can calculate what your ideal racing weight was, and I worked out that it was probably about 68 to 72 kilos. So I thought, well, I'm at that weight, I don't want to lose more because I lose power and efficiency. So I followed your and Izzy's advice and thought, well, let's just stabilise it there, and I need to not lose too much more, but not put any more on again.
And did you, just talk about one or two things, did you cut a couple of things completely out, or did you just modify things? Or?
I did, I cut out sweets and lollies and chocolate almost completely. I think I can, I limit myself to 100 grams of dark chocolate every few days, as a bit of a treat. And I did, I used to maybe drink 2 or 3 glasses of wine a week, probably would drink 1 a fortnight now, so reduced the alcohol. I reduced the, and early on I fairly dramatically reduced the bread and toast. So I still do have bread and toast now, but maybe not as much as I used to as a snack. And I'm probably much more conscious of what I'm putting in my mouth and trying to do it in a balanced way, so I make sure with each meal that I have a good combination of carbohydrates and fats and proteins.
Okay, great. And so, in terms of things that can go wrong during the preparation for a big race, you've managed to stay healthy and relatively injury-free, apart from an accident on the bike last week. Could you talk about how you've achieved that, and then how you've also achieved such consistent training?
Well, I thought preparing for and doing an Ironman was a fairly big undertaking, and I remember you and some of the others in the club saying actually the Ironman is a big thing, but the hardest thing is not doing the Ironman, the hardest thing is getting to the Ironman without injury. So I was kind of sobered by that and thought, no, I want to prepare well and plan well. So I did do some readjustments to, I guess, my life and approach to how I structured things. And so to start with, I changed my bedtime. So instead of trying to, instead of getting to bed at 11 to 12, I have tried to get to bed at 9 to 10 to get better sleep in. I've, with your and Izzy's advice, had a better approach to nutrition and eating. I've started take regular vitamins these days that I didn't used to do. And I've tried to be self-aware of my body too as I've been training. And so if I am overly tired or feeling like something's straining in my body other than just a niggle that goes away after half an hour, then I've sought to back off and give the running a break if my ankle's playing up. And I reckon it's been helpful too, the way you helped me structure my training, building up over 3 weeks and then having a week that was a bit more of a recovery week. Sometimes I've got to the end of that 3 weeks and felt pretty tired, and so the recovery week that you've helped me build in has been really helpful.
Okay, great. And you mentioned changing or increasing your sleep. So just generally talking about time management, about how many hours have you been training a week, and how have you achieved that, combining that with work, family, and sleep and other things that we need to all do?
Well, the tri course was a good introduction to just doing at least one swim, one bike ride and one run a week to get into it and to train for maybe 5 or 6 or 7 hours a week, which was a good preparation for a spring triathlon. I can't remember how many hours I was putting in getting ready for Challenge Shepparton. I didn't do it with a written down timetable. I think we would just go out and train and follow the club around, with most stuff on Saturday, on the weekends. But then in November, as we sat down and did that training plan, and basically it was a 17-week training plan with building some strength and then building some endurance, and then this last month of tapering, and that built in about 15 to 20 hours a week of training over the period of time. There was 1 week I think I did 30 hours. I was away on holiday, so I was really enjoying the bike out at Wilson's Prom. And then this last week I've only done 5, in the last 7 days I've only done 5 hours. That's because I had 2 days off after the accident. So it's been about 15 or 20 hours, and I had to, before we did Ironman, I talked to my family and especially to my partner Jenny and said, this is a big undertaking, how do you feel about this, and what can I do to continue to nurture you, to nurture the family as well as do this dream of mine. So it took some negotiation there, and it helped. I've got a understanding and supportive family and a flexible workplace. I've tried not to take advantage of that, but that's been helpful. And it's also been helpful that I've had some, Christmas in there and holidays and then some annual leave and then some extra annual leave has helped me manage that as well. As has getting up at 5:30, and it has meant a bigger commitment. It is quite a kind of commitment of time and energy and tiredness and so on, and much less time for. In the past, I had more time for other discretionary activities like my own writing or other hobbies, but this is pretty much the one hobby I've had for the last however long I can remember now. How long has it been? 4 or 5 months.
It does tend to take over.
It is. I reckon though too, one thing I find is that as a sport and as a hobby and doing it with a community sports club, it is it does segue well with and is consistent with my work. I teach as a local church pastor and as a teacher of spirituality and leadership. I encourage people to have a holistic approach to life and well-being. So as I encourage others to have a life-giving approach to spirituality as well as a positive approach to mental health and to physical exercise, I guess I'm trying to practice and model that myself as well. So it's been a good learning. It's a good learning journey for me and Nan.
A bit more on the nutrition side of things, and I know as part of that you've been involved as part of the gut study at Monash. Would you like to talk a little bit about that and include your nutrition plan for the race?
Sure. So, as well as seeing Izzy de Castella as a nutritionist, I saw that Ricardo da Costa, a lecturer and researcher at Monash University, was looking for participants in a gut study. And he was basically, his study is to explore how endurance athletes absorb the nutrition they take on during endurance events and in training. And his proposal or hypothesis, I guess, is that if we, as endurance athletes, train our gut to absorb nutrition in training, then when we come to events, we'll be able to take on more nutrition. So he had me on the treadmill for 3 hours twice. It's quite a, I've never been on a treadmill for an hour, I think, before in my life, let alone for 3 hours. And we did a VO2 test. And his conclusion was, for me, that after having trained my gut to absorb nutrition, and I was using some amazeballs during my training over 2 weeks, that I can absorb 71.3 grams, and it's quite exact, of carbohydrates. So he suggests that I should train on, say, 80 grams of carbohydrates just to stretch and train my body to absorb more. But then when I'm in an event, don't eat more than 71.3 grams of carbohydrates because my body can't absorb any more than that.
Right.
So that was an interesting bit of, it was a helpful bit of scientifically developed advice for in my body, I guess.
Right.
So, as well as doing that study over the last 3 months as I've been training with you, with your advice, I've kind of practiced the nutrition that I'll have on the day and checked it with Isabella, and my plan, I guess, is this is our first day of carb loading, so this is the fun time of having a more low fibre and high carb diet over the next 3 days. And then on race morning, my plan is to have 2 crumpets with honey and 2 pieces of toast with honey and Vegemite, 1 each, a coffee and a banana. And then my next nutrition is 750 mils of Gatorade, leading up to the race, and 1 gel 20 minutes before the swim. And then I won't do much eating during the swim, but once we get on the bike, once we're stretching out on the bike, I'll have 1 750 bottle of Gatorade an hour, and on the half hour I'll have a gel, and on the hour I'll have an energy bar for the hours that we're on the bike. Except for when I'm half an hour out of transition, I'm going to stop eating altogether. So I'll make sure I'll have 1 gel maybe half an hour before, but I don't want to have any more things in my stomach while I go into transition. I won't eat anything in transition. I made the mistake of doing that in Challenge Melbourne and thought I'd have just a quick Vegemite sandwich in transition, and it sat on my stomach for 3/4 an hour and slowed me down about a minute a kilometre. And then, but once I'm on the run, I'll have a gel or some amazeballs every half hour to keep the nutrition up.
Yep, great. So let's get down to it. I'll ask you to put your cards on the table. So what times are you hoping to do for each leg on Sunday, and what will that overall time be, do you think, as you cross that finish line?
Yeah, that's something that we don't always necessarily talk about, is it? But it's kind of something that we're thinking about as we train. I've never done this distance before, so who knows what will happen. And I don't know what the conditions of the day will be, so anything could happen. But I guess I am doing it, I want to do my best. So I'm not someone who says, oh, as long as I can get over in 17 hours, that's good. I mean, I'll be very pleased to finish. But when I set out and signed up for it, I thought, I want to give this a go, and if I could do it in 12 hours or so or less, I'd be wrapped. And I think I still feel that now. Although then when we set out the training plan, I did kind of write a secret goal at the top. My goal was to finish strong and to have an exhilarating day,
Right.
and to finish, if I can, in under 11 hours.
Yep.
So that was kind of my secret goal. I didn't put that on Facebook, but I
Right.
shared that with you, and I said, well, let's train in that direction so that I might be able to achieve that.
Yeah.
And then as training's gone well, as you say, we haven't had any hiccups. The speed's been increasing in the different sports. Depending on the day, I'm hoping that might, that would be achievable.
Yeah.
And I figure in terms of times, I think a swim of something like an hour and 5 minutes is where I'll likely come out. Sometimes when we do 3.8 kilometre swims, sometimes I've done an hour and 10 minutes. Once I did an hour and 5 seconds. I was spewing that I didn't get 5 seconds faster. So I think an hour and 5 is possible. 5 minutes in transition. Jump on the bike, and I'm aiming, if things go well, for maybe 5 hours, 10 minutes on the bike. It might blow out a bit more. I might be able to do it a bit quicker, but I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not going to push myself too hard to try and push it under, say, 5 hours, even if I could, because I know I've got the marathon to run as well. Another 5 minutes for transition. Now, I must say, I reckon the run is the one I'm most uncertain about, because I think I might be able to do the ride, I'm hoping in 5 hours, 10 minutes, but the running that distance after that much exercise, I've never done that before, so I'm not sure how much I'll have left in me. But we'll see. I mean, if I could do it in even, say, on a really, really good day, if I've still got the energy going, if I could do it in 3 hours 35, then that might get me close to 10 hours, and that would be just an amazing, if I put everything in practice that you've taught me, and if I draw on all the fitness of the last 3 months, and all the nutrition goes to plan, I don't have too much wind on the bike, then, maybe there's a 5% chance I could break 10 hours.
Yep, that'd be amazing. So, thinking about the race, and while you should be, and you are quite confident, and looking forward to it, what are those parts that you're particularly looking forward to? And then there's always parts where everyone is a bit nervous about things or just unsure. You mentioned you're not quite sure how the run's going to go because you've never experienced that at the end of a race. Are there other parts that both excite you and also make you slightly terrified?
I'm looking forward to seeing friends and family along the way, seeing fellow team members and club members on the course, and seeing others on the sidelines. Our club, Hawthorn Triathlon Club, are running an aid station at 36 kilometres. I'm looking forward to getting there and seeing everyone there. Although I've come a long way for me in the swim, I still am nervous about the swim, and especially the first 800 metres, just getting started and getting into the rhythm. And although I'm more practiced at ocean swimming, I haven't had as much experience at swimming in packs with lots of people around me, so I'm still a little bit uncertain and nervous about that.
The rolling start should help with that.
The rolling start should help with that, because it won't be thousands of people at once. We'll be able to just go out in groups of 6, but there'll still be, I guess part of my swim plan is to swim and draft off people and swim in packs, so that, but I'm less experienced with that. I think the bike is probably the league I'm most confident about, but I'm also conscious that I know 180 kilometres is a long way. We've done that once or twice in practice, but that's without the swim and the run there as well. And so I know I can keep some speed up for a certain amount of.
So speaking of that strong finish, you and your daughter Emily, who's just behind the camera here, become very well known for your combined cartwheel finishes at the end of your 2 challenge races. And I think you can still see vision of those finishes from your Facebook page. So it must be great to finish races like that, although while Emily won't be able to join you at the end of the Ironman finish, you still plan to finish with a cartwheel.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that. It's kind of Emily's thing that I've just tagged along with, but maybe in honour of Emily, I'll give that a go. If I've got the strength in my wrists, I might give it a go.
Excellent. Then post-race. Now I know a number of people like to take a one-and-done approach to the Ironman. You do one and say, that's it, I'll move on to something else. I'm not sure that's going to be you, but I also know you're keen to do a fast marathon. So do you have any race plans at the moment for the future?
Well, the 2 things I do have in the diary is I am planning in the second half of the year to have another go at Melbourne Marathon. And that'll be my next main big sporting goal, I guess, to try and get a good time there. And then I'm also registered for Challenge Shepparton a month later, so that'll be on the back of Melbourne Marathon, so it won't be expect to get my best time ever there, but I'm doing it for the fun of it. And I don't know what I'll do next year. I'll wait and see. So I don't know I don't think I'll decide straight after this Ironman, but I'd love to do another Ironman one day. Won't necessarily be next year, but it could be. Okay. Maybe I'll wait for my cartwheeling daughter to be ready to do some more triathlons. She's quite keen, and so one day it would be lovely to come back and do an Ironman together with her.
And finish with the cartwheel.
And we could finish with a cartwheel, but I would have a bigger effort to have to try to catch up with her though. That's the problem.
True. Now I know that you're sponsored or an ambassador or a combination of the two for a couple of companies or organisations. Could you tell us a bit about those links?
Sure. Well, one is Runner's Kitchen. A friend of mine, Tara Reid, has started is an entrepreneur and started a company that makes energy bars and amaze balls for athletes and endurance athletes. So I find them helpful fuel for the run, and they're quite yummy. So I've enjoyed them as my food of choice for runs and for triathlons. And Tara was generous enough to cheer me on with her advice. With her husband Steve, they've been terrific in supporting me as a runner. And Tara's bought me a race suit for Ironman coming up. So it's a multi-sport fusion speed suit, which is a terrific comfy suit and very fast, especially on the bike and the other legs as well. And one of the good things about Fusion Multisport is that when you buy a speed suit off them, they're happy to put logos and sign writing and stuff on it. So I proudly fly the flag for Runner's Kitchen, and also for the club, Hawthorn Triathlon Club, have our logo on it. And I also am fundraising for Baptist World Aid Australia. And so Baptist World Aid, who do some terrific work in grassroots communities in some of the poorest parts of the world on a community development approach, have been an organisation I respect and support. And I think in this time when the government is talking about cutting foreign aid and just kind of looking after ourselves, I feel like, well, I'd like to do perhaps my part in raising some money for some of the areas of poverty in the world that Baptist World Aid work in.
Now, speaking to an audience who might have done a beginner's triathlon program, a sprint triathlon, and may have aspirations to complete in a half Ironman or Ironman distance in the future, what advice do you have for them? Where should they start? What should they think about doing?
I reckon the best first step is to join a local triathlon club and to do it with friends and supportive people that you can talk to about, and to have a go at a sprint triathlon. And if you enjoy that and are chafing at the bit to do something longer, then go to an Olympic distance and then half Ironman. And then if you're still chafing at the bit and you've got lots of time, prepared to put in the commitment and the training, then go the extra mile. And I think that as you increase in length of endurance event, it does take more in terms of training and more in terms of discipline focus. So I think the more you get into it or the more you want to get out of it, I think the more important it is to sign up with a coach and to get kind of one-on-one customised advice. And I think that's how you've helped me a lot over the last 6 months, Andrew, is really helping me to train well and to train safely and to train most productively. So.
Great. So that pretty much wraps it up. Are there any final thoughts or words that you'd like to finish up with?
Well, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for this time in the interview, and I've really appreciated your training with me and coaching input and the proactive interest you've taken in my development as a budding amateur triathlete. And I've just appreciated other friends and supporters and family who've cheered me on as well. And it's been great to find a sport that I love and that I'm passionate about, and to have joined a club of good friends and supporters who are sharing the fun and the journey with me.
Great. Well, that concludes part 1 of our interview, and there will be a part 2 post-race at some stage next week when we're both in a suitable state to have a conversation. So we'll see you then.
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.